On today's episode of Join Us in France, what are must-sees in Paris? What should you not miss on your first visit, or if you have only one day to spend in Paris? How do you get a feel for Paris in one day? Should you stay away from touristy places? What are places you should avoid if you only have one day in Paris? What about people who spend one day in Paris with a child? What about photography buffs? What if you really want to practice your French on that one day? And why are French museums a bit difficult for most people? Join Us in France, episode 90. Hello, I'm Annie, and Join Us in France is a travel podcast about all things French. But we mostly talk about travel, and sometimes it's going to be something historical or cultural. We love to talk about food and wine, obviously, because we live in France. We love this stuff. But today I am going to do an episode where I answer a question. This person says, I have a single Saturday in Paris in mid-November, no obligations. What would you recommend I do? And this person says, I love architecture, I love museums of all kinds, and I love people watching, I love antiquities, I love the obscure and the unusual, and out of the way, less touristy suggestions are really appreciated. So, this is what I recommend for this person. And by the way, lots of people find themselves in this situation because maybe they've never been to Paris before. This person doesn't say. So maybe this person hasn't ever been to Paris before, but maybe they've been to Paris before, but just not as a visitor. Maybe you've been for work, or maybe you've had a layover, but you stayed in the airport or something like that. And by the way, if you want to see some suggestions of what you can do with a nice long layover in Paris, go to episode, I think it was 73. Yes, it was episode 73, and it was called Layover in Paris. And this is an episode where I talk about what you can do to take public transportation between the airport and Paris, what you can do with your luggage even, because you probably want to store it. If you're on layover, you have luggage necessarily. And some of the things you might do in Paris, and some of the information I shared on episode 73 and this one is going to be overlapped, but not directly, because today I'm going to concentrate on what it is, what are the highlights of Paris. If you've not seen them before, what are those things that you cannot miss? Because if you did, you would be a little bit of a fool. Now, this person says less touristy things appreciated. Okay, let me go on a little bit of a rant about that. If you're going to Paris and you don't want to see anything touristy, you are making a big mistake. Paris has lots and lots and lots of things that you should see that are beautiful, that are worth seeing. Some of them less touristy, but if you automatically eliminate a place just because it's touristy, you are going to be missing out. There are reasons why these places have gotten so touristy, and the reason is they are lovely. They are beautiful. They are full of history. They are glorious to look at. They make people feel like they have experienced Paris. And if that doesn't mean anything to you, if you would rather go see some obscure little museum that has, 5 visitors a day instead of 5,000 visitors a day, well, you are probably, maybe that's your personality. Maybe that's who you are and you just don't want to see the highlights. But honestly, there's a reason why some museums get so few visitors. It's because, maybe it's just because nobody's talked about them. That's one thing. But it's also probably because it's not that nice, right? Also, the other thing you have to know, if you want to go to the less famous, this person says loves museums, very good. Plenty of choices on museums in Paris. But if you want to go to a French museum and expect that it will be self-explanatory, you are making a mistake. Museums in France are not self-explanatory. Museum curators in France make the assumption that the museum goer is an educated person who has taken the time to learn about that era, that time period. So if you go to a lovely museum like the Carnavalet in Paris, yes, you will see a lot of very interesting things. But if you don't know anything about it, if you don't have any background information, one, it's very likely that all the signage is going to be in French only. That's one problem with a lot of museums. I don't know if the Carnavalet specifically like that. I don't remember. But you will find that a lot in France, that the signage is all in French. No English, no Spanish, no nothing. And again, it's because the curator's opinion is that it's educated people that come to this museum, right? And educated people obviously speak French. Right, they're mistaken about that. But still, that's their point of view. That's their world view. Okay? So, if you show up in a museum like the Carnavalet and you don't speak French and you don't really know very much of the history, well, you are not going to get very much out of it. You will see objects and it will not make any sense. The French museums are not the kind of place where they take you by the hand and they tell you a story, a very simple story, and you get out having learned that one simple story. No, they throw a lot of stuff at you, and it's up to you to be discerning and to be knowledgeable enough to make sense of it. Now, there is a movement in France to get away from that sort of attitude, but it's still very prevalent, especially in minor museums. Okay? So, this is my little rant about if you don't want to see anything touristy, maybe don't go to Paris. Maybe go to some other city. For instance, the city of Albi in the south of France it has tourists, but compared to Paris, it's absolutely nothing. It has a fabulous museum of art, the Museum of Toulouse-Lautrec, right? Much more low-key, very nice, that sort of thing. But if you are in Paris, you have to see Paris. You can't just go hide in a place where nobody goes. Okay, so rant over for that. If this is your first time in Paris and you have one day, okay, this is what I would do. In the morning, I would start early and I would walk around the Ile de la Cité, or maybe the Latin Quarter. And I would just walk, sit down at a cafe, have breakfast, have a croissant. If you're like me, you won't have a croissant, you will have a pain au chocolat, or as we call it in the south of France, chocolatine. In Paris, they call it a pain au chocolat. So it's a chocolate bread, right? But it's not a bread, it's a pastry, really. It's a Danish, okay? So have your croissant, have your coffee or a café au lait. French people don't really do lattes yet. A few places, of course, there's some Starbucks now, but for the most part, if you want a latte, ask for a café au lait, and that's what you're going to get. It's not going to be as frothy, but it's that sort of a drink. And you're not going to get a gallon size café au lait either, okay? It's going to be probably a cup worth of coffee. They don't do the mega giant big drinks of coffee. Nobody drinks that in France. French people like to have a small, very strong flavored coffee, and they don't usually put sugar in it. We're a little strange. I don't do that. I love my coffee in the morning, weak and with milk and sugar. So, that's just me. But I'm not that French when it comes to that. Although I am French in many, many other ways. I insist. So you walk around either the Latin Quarter, which is very close to Notre Dame, or the Ile de la Cité if you want to see rich and maybe possibly famous people, because Ile de la Cité is so expensive to live in. It's like where actors and famous, very rich people live. Latin Quarter is more of a popular kind of place, but it's also very nice and very close to where I think you should go. So spend an hour or so walking around in the morning, taking in the views of the Ile de la Cité. And Ile de la Cité, by the way, we talked about it in the very the second episode, episode 2, it's where Paris was born. And this is, Elise gives a very nice explanation. We were a little bit nervous in front of a microphone at the beginning, but it's still very worth listening to it. It's Ile de la Cité is where Paris was born, and obviously you're not going to see the settlements from, the prehistorical times. But there were people on that little island in the middle of the Seine River from times immemorial. I mean, as long as there's been people there, okay? Just really, truly, the birth of Paris is right there. So walk around, take in the local people. This person says that she likes to do people watching. Well, this is perfect. Do some people watching. Stop, have a couple of cups of coffees in different places, because, different perspective. Perspective is everything. And when you're done with that, I would go visit Notre Dame. I would not beat around the bush. This is Paris. You got to see Notre Dame, okay? Notre Dame, lovely, lovely place. Depending on how much time you want to spend there, the minimum I would do is walk all the way around the cathedral. And I would also walk outside of the cathedral, because you will see some, what people used to live. And you have to imagine that people used to live very close to the cathedral, and they used to look up at this monumental thing all the time. And you have to imagine what it must have been like to be poor in the Middle Ages and looking up at this thing, and imagine how they felt. That is just a powerful, powerful thing that you can do to yourself, and just say, I'm poor, I'm sleeping on straw, and my meals come from some big pot of everlasting soup, where you just keep adding whatever vegetables you find and whatever meat you find. You kill a rabbit, put the rabbit in there. That's sort of a lifestyle. And then you walk out and you have this church. Imagine that. It's just powerful. So I would walk all the way around. And by the way, there's a park in the back of Notre Dame where it's a public park. So it's got a fence and it's got opening and closing hours. But it also has a very nice public bathroom, and that's kept pretty clean as far as bathrooms are concerned in France. That could be another rant, but I'm not going to do it. Do have coins in your pocket. No, I don't know if that particular one wants coins, but if you don't have any coins, you might be in a pickle to find a bathroom that will let you. Also, the other thing that you will find in that back little park is Wi-Fi, free public Wi-Fi. All parks in Paris, so long as they're fenced and they have opening and closing hours, have Wi-Fi. You can just find it with your device and use it, and it's usually pretty good. The thing is, it closes at night, so it's not available, 24 hours. It's limited hours. Summer hours are longer than winter hours. But anyway, you're there for a day, right? So it doesn't matter what happens at night. It'll be open for you. So walk around the cathedral. Also walk inside of Notre Dame. Notre Dame is one of those classy cathedrals, okay? There are cathedrals of all sorts all over Europe. Some of them are very popular and very tchotchke-like, have lots and lots of candles, have lots of plastic Virgin Marys, have, that sort of thing. Notre Dame is not like that, okay? It is a classy cathedral. It has room. It feels roomy. It feels grand. It's just the feeling in there is just overwhelming. Now, of course, I love to walk into cathedrals. If there's a church and the door's open, I will go in, because I'm not a religious person, but I love to see churches. I think churches speak loudly about the human condition and about what it is that makes us who we are today. So seeing that I love history, I love churches. So I would walk around Notre Dame, take your time, look at some details. You might arrive at a time when there is a service going on. And if that's the case, sit down for a minute, listen. It will probably be in French, although sometimes they do services in other languages. Sometimes the singing is exquisite. Notre Dame has a beautiful choir, boys' choir, where they often have, when you walk in, this has happened to me a few times, you walk in and you have an adult priest with a boy singing. And they do some pieces that are just made for that sort of singing. And it is just beautiful. Now, you have to imagine that if you're a priest in France and you get invited to go to Notre Dame, you are one of the top-notch priests in the country. So I always have a giggle because they're always good-looking and they can sing, which is not always the case in every French church you go to. So Notre Dame, take your time, walk around. If the line is short, and I should have said this before, when you do your walk around Notre Dame, if you notice, if you're facing Notre Dame, to your left on the side is where you get the tickets for going up the towers of Notre Dame. Going into the church is free and open to the public. They might not let you in with a big bag, and they might look inside of your bag for safety reasons, but it's free and open to the public. But if you're facing the cathedral, to the left, at the very bottom of the church, look down because it's so tall, people look up and they miss it. There's a little place where you buy the tickets to go up the tower. That's the only thing you have to pay for. The tower is a lot of stairs, but it's very, very good exercise. And sometimes the line is really long. If the line is really long and you only have one day, I would skip it. But if you happen to be there on a day when the line is not too long, I would definitely get a ticket. It's probably 10 euros or something like that. And get your ticket, go up the tower. You'll get some good exercise. It's 300 and something steps. And some of the way you're inside of the tower, you don't see anything. But then you start walking outside a little bit. And that is so beautiful because you get to see the gargoyles from up close. You get to see details on the roof. The roof of Notre Dame has some beautiful sculpture. It's truly beautiful. You can see the whole city, and you can see the Eiffel Tower, which is not that far away as the crow flies. It's just a fun experience. So I would do it if you have the time, and if the line for tickets isn't too long. If you have, a few hundred people ahead of you, take a look and see if it moves fast. But maybe that's one in a day. You may not have time to do all of that. Okay. Now, so you've done your breakfast. You've walked all around Notre Dame. You've enjoyed the Ile de la Cité. You might have walked up the tower. You've seen Notre Dame. Now it's getting close to lunchtime. What I would do, my take on lunch is go in Paris. Don't go cheap on the food. If you can afford a 50 euro lunch, do it. Because that pretty much guarantees that you will have a fine lunch. It might not be, the very best you've ever had, but it'll be a good lunch. And definitely have some wine with your lunch because you're in France and this is what we do, okay? But if you don't have the funds or the time to go find a nicer restaurant that will serve you something fancy, and you will find plenty of those like around the City Hall, Paris City Hall, those kinds of places. But right around Notre Dame, right on the plaza, you have some brasseries. These little cafes also serve lunch and dinner. Yeah, they probably serve dinner too. They serve all day. And they are pretty fast. They are pretty inexpensive. It's going to be probably 15 euros to 20 euros or something for a lunch, maybe a little more with wine if you get some wine. But, you could always ask for un pichet de vin. Un pichet de vin. A pitcher. It kind of looks like that. Pichet. That's the house wine. And that one will probably cost you 5 euros or something at the most. And it might just be included in your meal too. So, have lunch right there. It is not high cuisine. It's not absolutely fabulous, but they'll serve you a nice salad or a nice omelette or lots of those sorts of places now offer, they have a burger or something, or you could have steak frites, which is the default French lunch, steak and fries. So, It's a nice place. You can sit down. Definitely use the bathroom before you leave, because sometimes bathrooms are a bit of a problem in Paris. So don't leave without using the bathroom. Have a nice lunch and enjoy your time there. Okay, the afternoon. What do you do in the afternoon? You are very close to the Sainte-Chapelle, and you should see the Sainte-Chapelle. Okay, again, me and my churches. I love churches. But I would definitely not miss the Sainte-Chapelle, especially if it's a little bit of a sunny day, okay? If you have sun rays coming out, oh my goodness, it is going to be so beautiful. Sainte-Chapelle is known for its stained glass windows. They are so tall, so blue. They are amazing. I'm sure you've seen stained glass windows in your life, okay? But you have not seen those. Those are so much better than anything else you've seen before. Just amazing. And if you have a little bit of sun, oh, it'll be just heaven. It's like walking into a kaleidoscope. It is just awesome. Awesome, awesome. Okay. So visit the Sainte-Chapelle. You don't need to know that much about the history of the Sainte-Chapelle to enjoy it. See, that's why I'm recommending these places, is because even if you know nothing about Notre Dame, you don't even want to know why it's there, what it's doing. You don't want to know nothing. You just want to look at something beautiful. Well, Notre Dame is it. Sainte-Chapelle is it. You can enjoy it without knowing anything about it. It's just right there. It's just beautiful. It will hit you in the face. It will touch your heart, and it will create a lasting memory. Now, the Sainte-Chapelle also has this they also do concerts at the Sainte-Chapelle. Now, it's not a very large church, so you're not going to have, a symphony and a big choir or something. No, it's going to be probably a quatuor. It's going to be like a string quartet. It's going to be something small. And they always do concerts that are very approachable. So it's not going to be, some piece that you've never heard of by a composer you've never heard of. It's probably going to be something very well known, because they are trying to appeal to the widest audience, and so they keep it very simple. But those are top-notch musicians. They probably work at the French Opera House, or maybe they work at the Paris Symphony. I said the French Opera House. I didn't mean the French Opera House. I meant the Paris Opera House. They probably work with the Paris Symphony. These are top-notch musicians. You're not going to get second-rate musicians there. But they will play something very approachable, which is good. They often do like the Four Seasons or whatever. So that sort of piece that you've heard. And the concert is going to be an hour and a half maybe. If you're there in the evening, or sometimes on Sundays they do afternoon concerts, it would be very worth your time, because then you get to sit there and hear that beautiful music and see this thing. It's like, I'm telling you, it's like a kaleidoscope, especially when it's sunny outside. It's unbelievable. It's just beautiful, beautiful. Now, your day is pretty much spent. What else can you do if you have a few more hours? Well, this is the other thing that I would do. And lots of people say, why are you recommending this? This is like so overdone, blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm sorry, folks. It is overdone because it's very, very nice. And that is taking a ride on the Bateau Mouche. Okay? Les Bateaux Mouche go back to Notre Dame. You, on the banks of the river, you can buy your ticket. It's maybe 15 euros or something like that. You sit in there and they take you all the way down to the Eiffel Tower and back. It is absolutely gorgeous. You see some of the most beautiful buildings along the way. The Eiffel Tower, I'm sorry, but the Eiffel Tower is awesome. It is beautiful. It just makes me happy seeing it. It means Paris. It means more than Paris. It means France, right? It is like the thing you need to see. And it is huge. You can't... If you haven't seen it, you just go, you've seen so many of these little plastic reproductions that are ridiculous. Well, it's nothing like that. And it's nothing like the one in Las Vegas either, which is fine, by the way. But the Eiffel Tower is really good. And if you can be there in the evening, if you can do your Bateau Mouche, so if you have a full day, so you're there from 7 in the morning till 11 at night or something, then definitely go in the evening. Do your Bateau Mouche in the evening. You will see the Eiffel Tower sparkle. Every half hour, on the hour and half hour, that it does a sparkle show. It's just gorgeous. It's just beautiful. Okay, so that's what I would do in a day. Okay, that definitely would do that in a day. That's enough. It'll give you a great feel for Paris, and you will leave having thought like, oh, this was a good day. This was a good day. Because I am not telling you to go all over the place, okay? I'm telling you to go to Ile de la Cité, central Paris, and stay there the whole day, pretty much. Notre Dame is right there. Ile de la Cité, you just walk around there, or even Latin Quarter is very close on the left bank. And then if you want to go see the Sainte-Chapelle, it's also very close, walking distance. If you take the bateau mouche, you just come back to Notre Dame and you take your bateau mouche. You have not exhausted yourself, hiking through all of this, but if you went up the tower, you have had your exercise for the day. So, so that's pretty good. So that would be a very nice day, in my opinion. That's my opinion. Some of the other things that you should keep in mind, those lists of top 10 in Paris or highlights of Paris often include things that I think are just silly. For instance, people say Montmartre and the Sacré-Cœur. Okay, Sacré-Cœur, it's a very striking looking church from the outside, but inside, it's very dark. It's very, very, very dark. You will hardly see anything. And also, it's the kind of church where, first of all, it's extremely popular. Okay, it's a very, it's the plastic souvenir kind of church, okay? And it is for people who are, it's like a pilgrimage church is the word I was looking for. Pilgrimage church. It is just the kind of place where people go because they want to pray. And if you show up with your camera and your like touristy, your visitor attitude towards religion, they might give you some funny looks. Well, they certainly gave me some funny looks. So I don't think it's a must-see. I mean, Sacré-Cœur, it's fine, but that was the Sacré-Cœur. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Montmartre, La Butte de Montmartre. This is a place that has a lot of history to it, but it has turned into a circus, in my opinion. It is the kind of place where you have thousands of people all walking in the same direction. There's like this path that you're almost obliged to follow because we're like sheep, we just follow tourists. But Montmartre is fine there are people who do street art and whatever, stuff like that. It's fine, but you'll find it other places in Paris too. One thing that you do find in Montmartre that you don't find in other places in Paris is ethnic food. I gotta tell you, I'm French, but French people, we are a bit stubborn. We like our food and nothing else. And so we don't like change. We don't like to be introduced to new things, that sort of thing. So ethnic food is not a big hit in France. One of the few places where it is Montmartre, where there are enough visitors and enough people walking around all the time that these restaurants actually make a living. Ethnic restaurants, I mean. So if you are going to go to an ethnic restaurant there, or a restaurant of any sort, there's all sorts of restaurants there, and they're pretty nice. Yeah, it's worth going to Montmartre. But would I go just so that I can do the obligatory walk in the church and then walk around with all the tourists? No, I would not do that, because that to me is not Paris anymore. It is just, that is 1000% touristy. It's not, there's nothing left of, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, right? It's my podcast. I can give you my opinion. I told you to go on the bateau mouche, and there are people who feel that way about the bateau mouche, that it's too touristy. But I'm sorry, the bateau mouche take you in a very short amount of time, in an hour or an hour and 15 minutes. You will see a lot of the banks of Paris. You will see the Eiffel Tower. You will see some beautiful stuff, right? But if you just go to Montmartre and you walk around, well, you're going to see a lot of plastic souvenirs is what you're going to see. And I don't think it's worth it. I just don't think it's worth it. So that makes the top list of lots of people's list, and I don't think it's you can't just I can't justify it. I can't see why. Now, another place that people aren't sure about, the Eiffel Tower, blah blah blah. Yeah, the Eiffel Tower. If you only have one day, don't go to the Eiffel Tower. Like, don't take the underground. I mean, the RER and go all the way. It's far away. It's far away. And once you're at the Eiffel Tower, you're far away from most anything else. Now, if it's always been your dream and that's the one thing you want to do, of course, go. It's a beautiful place, right? But if you're happy just seeing it from the boat, then see it from the Bateau Mouche. It'll be very lovely. If you want to get the view from the Trocadero, then you need to get off the boat and go especially. But you have to know that going to the Eiffel Tower is off-center, and it's going to take you a good 2 hours, 3 hours maybe. So it's going to eat up a lot of your day just to do that. If it's something you want to do it. I love the Eiffel Tower. I'll go to the Eiffel Tower any day. Okay, so I'm not bad-mouthing it. I just think that if you only have one day, it might take too long to get there. That's all. Big museums like the Louvre. Yes, lovely, beautiful Louvre. I love it. But what are you gonna get of Paris if you just go to the Louvre that one day? You could spend the whole day and see only a tenth of it, and unless you have this burning desire to go see, I don't know, Egyptian art or something, then yeah, go. But if you're not an art aficionado that already knows a lot about art, yeah, I wouldn't go spend the day in the Louvre. If you just have the one day, don't do that. I would go. If you have a week, I would go. But if you have just the one day, I would not. So what if you have just the one day and you're there with kids? That is a very good question. I think what I would do, depending on the age of the kids, I think I might go to catacombs. Because the catacombs, it's kind of a bit of walking. I mean, you do have lots of stairs too. So there's some walking, but it's just a little spooky, a little sobering. And I'm recording this, it's almost Halloween. So that's probably why I have the catacombs on my mind. But yeah, I think the catacombs are fun to do if you have just the one day and you have a kid with you. It's something they will remember. Let's put it that way. They will forget most other things, but they probably won't forget the catacombs. Now, if you have a kid that's very impressionable, then maybe not a good plan. Because, you are surrounded by skulls and bones, okay? The catacombs are where the cemeteries in Paris were so full that they couldn't bury people anymore, so they emptied the cemeteries. They kept the bones in an organized way, so when you visit the catacombs, you will see that these are the bones that were in this area of that specific cemetery, okay? But they just stacked them. They just stacks and stacks and stacks of bones, because these were old stone quarries, so they had these tunnels everywhere, and there's many more that are not full of bones anymore. But yeah, it's just I can't call it a fun place to see, but it's a very worthwhile thing to see in Paris. That would be good for a visitor with a kid. Another thing that often makes it the list of highlights of Paris is the Champs-Élysées and the Arc de Triomphe. I totally disagree with that. I don't think you should, if you are going to be in Paris for just one day, I wouldn't go. Unless it's your lifelong desire to do it, obviously. But if you want to just see the most Parisian of Paris, don't go there. Because the Champs-Élysées is a place where you will have a lot of stores that pay super high rent. And they want to sell so badly that, if you love shopping, but these are also the kinds of stores you will find anywhere else in France. So it's not that special anymore. Not in my opinion. It's just not that special anymore. The Arc de Triomphe, yeah, it's nice. You have a nice view from up there. But what you mostly see and what's really, really striking is the Rond-Point de l'Étoile, so the roundabout that the Arc de Triomphe sits in the middle of. It's interesting because this is an old-style French roundabout with right-hand side priority. Even if you know roundabouts, you've never seen a roundabout like this one, because on a normal roundabout, before you enter the roundabout, you have to yield to whoever's coming from your left. This roundabout, and a few others in France, there's not that many of them left because they're terribly dangerous. Nobody understands what's going on. Is you have priority as you enter the roundabout. But then you have to yield to everybody else who's entering the roundabout. And it makes a massive mess, especially when it's very busy. It's terrible. So if you want to see that kind of driving chaos, yes, then go up the Arc de Triomphe and you'll see that. And it's fun to see. Yeah, it's fun to see. But if you only have one day in Paris, I wouldn't make that my one thing to do. Another thing that often makes the top 10 list is Père Lachaise, the cemetery. I've done an episode on Père Lachaise. It was episode 68. I love the place. It's absolutely fabulous. The thing is, it's far away from everything else. And if you only have one day, don't go there. Do this other stuff that I told you about earlier. Père Lachaise is lovely, but that's good if you have several days in Paris. Don't go for just the one day. And you know what? If you are not up to walking very much, I would definitely recommend just take the bus in Paris. Take the city bus. You don't have to take the hop on, hop off bus. I mean, those are fine too if you're trying to save time. The city buses are very fun. There's people who say go in the metro in Paris. That's one of the highlights. Okay, the metro in Paris is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Some metro stations are very nice looking and have history and all of that, but you're there for one day. Don't be in a tunnel. That doesn't make any sense to me. No, don't do that. Just if you don't want to walk and you still want to see a lot of Paris from the comfort of a seat, well, then take a bus. Take a city bus. Just go all the way out to the end of the line and all the way back to where you started from, and then take another bus in another direction. You could do that. It wouldn't be my idea of a fun day, but you would see quite a bit doing that, Better than doing that in the metro, honestly. I mean, if you're a photographer, where should you go if you're a photographer and you just want to take some pictures, fun pictures of Paris that one day? Okay, the Eiffel Tower is fine. You can take some nice pictures of especially like the Grand Palais, but the Eiffel Tower is the distinguishing feature of Paris. So I would not take my photos from the Eiffel Tower. So if you want to take nice photos, go up Notre Dame Tower. You will get some nice photos there. Or go up the Montparnasse Tower. Montparnasse, Montparnasse. That one, you pay a little bit to get to the top, but you have glorious views of Paris. Or if you go to the Musée du Monde Arabe, that one, you can go to the terrace, and I think it's even free, and get some really nice pictures from up there. So those would be good places for photographers. There are people who say, if you go to Montmartre, where the big Sacré-Cœur church is, you'll get some nice views. I don't think so. I think the view from up there is not that interesting. I mean, I've taken some pictures from up there, but not that interesting. So, yeah, for photographers, I would say that the tower at Notre Dame, the Montparnasse Tower, and the l'Institut du Monde Arabe, right along the banks of the river, has a nice terrace where you can take some photos. Now, if you're in Paris for just one day, but you would like to practice your French, well, then I say go to some of the less known places. Like, for instance, there's this big market at the Porte de Clignancourt. Clignancour. The big market, on the weekend, it's a flea market. It's not every day, but it's a pretty nice market. Or you could go to any market, and I'll find you a list of Paris markets that I'll put on joinusinfrance.com/90 that you can see. But depending on the day, markets are mostly in the morning. They're not every day, so do check out the schedule before you go. But yeah, that would be fun. Go to the market, buy some things, whatever you want, and talk to people. That would be good. Sit at a cafe, watch people, any cafe. That would be very fun too. But definitely do not avoid the biggies in Paris just because they're touristy. That's a mistake. They're touristy because they're lovely. That's just the reality of it. If you have a burning desire to see impressionists, post-impressionists, well, go to the Musée d'Orsay. Orsay Museum. You can see it in a day. It's very approachable art. It's nice. If you want to do just one museum that one day, yes, probably that one. If I only had one day in Paris, would I necessarily do that? Not really. I would still go to Notre Dame, Sainte-Chapelle, and Bateau Mouche. That would be, if you just have the one day, that's what you do in Paris. Okay. Well, folks, that's going to be it for us today. Thank you so much for your support, everybody. But I wanted to give some advice because there are so many people who look for lists of highlights of Paris who don't really just, you don't really know, you've never been, you've never been, you don't know. You need somebody to direct you. And that's what I love to do on this show. And of course, on joinusinfrance.com, you will find lots and lots of other shows on Paris. If you go to the right-hand side of the site, you'll see categories. And in these categories, you'll see that Paris, there's 25 plus episodes on Paris. So if you want to know about a specific area in Paris, you will find it there as well. Okay, thank you very much, everybody, and I'll talk to you next week. Au revoir. This brings us to the end of another Join Us in France travel podcast. You can leave a comment on the website, follow us on Facebook, or look for @ParisPodcast on Twitter. I put lots of information on Facebook and Twitter that never makes it into the shows. And also, this is a subliminal message. Join the mailing list now, today. You can do that on joinusinfriends.com. Look for the green button. Et c'est tout pour aujourd'hui.